Hey everyone, you saw the title, so you know what the video will be about. It's a bit of a negative topic though, isn't it? I'll try not to make this a video where I'm just complaining about games though. What I'll do is talk about games and why they disappointed me, but I'll also mention things I liked about them as well. So basically this video will just be my opinion on some specific games that I picked out. There really isn't that much of a theme, it's just that I wanted to talk about these games. Let's start with Noire. Originally, this was a PS3 and Xbox 2 game, but it later received PC, PS4, and Xbox 3 releases as well. This is a decently popular game, so I'm pretty sure you've heard about it before. Overall, I liked Noire. It has an artistic feel to it, and also games that make an effort in terms of replicating specific time periods is always something I really enjoy. As a car guy, I can also appreciate all the licensed vehicles, and it's one of those rare games you can do some legit car spotting in. The graphics, even on the PS3, were pretty good. Facial expressions are of course the highlight, and they're also integral in terms of the gameplay. The storyline was something I liked following as well. Now, those are all pretty good points, but what I was disappointed with was a few things. Admittedly, I might have been expecting too much. In fact, because it was published by Rockstar, I figured, hey, it'll be like GTA, but in the 40s. Turns out that wasn't really the case. I didn't like the driving physics at all. The cars look good, but they're really strange when you're cornering. It's almost like there's some weird four-wheel steering that's going on, but the back wheels are turning in the same way as the front wheels. The back follows the front a little bit when you're, let's say, turning right and changing lanes or something. Another thing I wasn't a fan of is that the world wasn't really all that detailed. It's fine, and actually even rather brilliant looking if you're at whatever location the story is taking place in, but if you wander around, things look a little bit bland. For me, Noire is best enjoyed if you just stick to the story. It didn't become a GTA alternative for me at the end. Driving isn't enjoyable at all, and there isn't really all that much to do outside of the missions. Another reason for my disappointment might have been to do with the fact that I paid full price back in 2011. It's pretty easy to get this game at a cheap price nowadays though, with all the Steam sales, so I think if I bought it later, I wouldn't have been as disappointed. Next up, we have another cinematic sandbox type game taking place in the mid-20th century United States, and also this time the main character is on the other side of the law. It's Mafia 2. I absolutely loved the PC version of Mafia 1. The first game was so atmospheric, and while it did have some things that could use improving, for me Mafia 1 was I guess you could say a life-changing experience. Sounds a bit like an over-exaggeration, but I think it's true. I never played a game where I was so invested in the story before. At the same time, I started becoming interested in the music from the game, like Django Reinhardt and other gypsy jazz musicians, as well as other things related to the era like cars, art, and architecture. It took quite a while for Mafia 2 to finally be released, but when I did, I got the physical copy on release date. I remember that day very well. It was the first physical game I ever bought that required Steam. I also remember how it only took one day to complete like 95% of the story. Right at like the last mission, or maybe the second last mission, is where I stopped and decided to go to bed. The next day I started playing again in the morning, and then I realized, yeah, this game isn't all that long. And the problem with Mafia 2 is not that I almost beat it in a day, but I never had the feeling that the story ever got off the ground. The main character, whatever the hell his name is again, isn't likable at all, and comes across as a scumbag, which really doesn't help either. The story was just such a disappointment compared to the first game. No ups, no downs. There's barely anything that really makes you feel like time is even passing throughout the story. It's just mission after mission. It doesn't feel like the character is even advancing through the ranks at all. You're just being told to do a job and then you do that job. With Mafia 1, you could see how the character was going through moral dilemmas and things like that. Another thing that bothered me was no free roam mode. I had to reload one of the later save games if I just wanted to screw around, because there was that one mission where you got lots of money. I'm pretty sure there is a mod now that allows you to do, the free roam sort of thing, so I'll have to look at that when I play the game again. Special mention also to that one radio announcer who tries way too hard to convince the players that the game takes place in the 50s. It's just so bad when he basically goes, "Smoking causes cancer? LOL, that's an interesting theory." Let me think of other things that were new during the 50s because that'll make the experience more immersive. Also, all the voiceovers in the radio, they sound like modern recordings, which really clashes with the recording quality of the songs, which are of course actually from that time period. I know this may sound really nitpicky, but I just can't stand that. But I did like the game. There's parts about it I liked very much, in fact. I really enjoyed the very first part where you come back home from the war and walk and drive through the snowy city. It just looks so amazing and there's so much atmosphere. And just driving around is pretty fun too. All the cars are nice to look at and they also feel decent to drive. I like how they included little details like the tires flexing when you go over bumps or when you're just leaning hard on them during cornering. The world itself feels very full of life and everything's really pretty to look at too. Something I can't say about LA Noire, but it does have actual licensed cars, so it's got that going for it. Mafia 2 doesn't, unfortunately. Now, this wouldn't be a YSN video if I didn't talk about Japanese games, so let's take a look at Mugen Souls. I say let's take a look, but I don't even have gameplay footage of this game because I sold it many years ago. Not sure what I'm going to show on the screen, maybe a trailer or some screenshots. It's got traits of both Neptunia and Disgaea in terms of gameplay and story, so it would seem like something I'd enjoy. Perhaps it's like when you like all the ingredients in a dish, but somehow you don't like the end result when it's all cooked. I feel that analogy works well. It's been a while since I've last played it, but I think the aspect I least enjoyed was gameplay. I remember not getting to grips with the combat system, or maybe some of the game mechanics around it. There was that peon ball or whatever the hell that was again. And then in the end, I was just annoyed playing it. I almost recommended this game in the Neptunia Alternatives video because I know there are many Neptunia fans who like Mugen Souls as well. But I didn't feel comfortable recommending a game I didn't enjoy playing and ended up selling, basically. The next game is something I've never heard people really talk about. It's called Tokitowa, or Time and Eternity, as the title was localized as. This is another game I ended up selling, and it's only available for the PS3. I just thought it was clunky overall. I really didn't like how it played. This game's gimmick was that the characters were all animated, like in an anime. That sounds like a really good idea, but it didn't turn out quite as one would hope. First of all, the game just looks really low budget. Sprites were just plastered over 3D backgrounds that look pretty good, if this was a PS1 game. The environments just looked so tragically bland, like you were walking around in some sort of test environment or something. And also the sprites, I guess, the animation of them wasn't all that great, but it's also amplified by the fact that the sprite movements just don't match up with the 3D parts. You know how Mario Kart 64 looked wonky because of the sprites? Or maybe in Road Rash when you're taking a corner? That's basically what's going on in Tokitowa. Unlike with other games, I don't really have much to say. In fact, I don't even remember the story or anything. There was this sort of split personality or dual persona thing going on, but other than that, I can barely recall a thing. I will give credit to the idea though. Trying to make the game look like an anime is pretty ambitious, but I feel that the budget, or the fact that it probably barely had one, ensured that Tokitowa would never be what the developers wanted. Okay, this next one I think some people might not agree with, but it's Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. My favorite Prince of Persia games are the Sands of Time trilogy. People say trilogy, but then there's Forgotten Sands, but who cares about little details like that? The first game in that trilogy was the Sands of Time. I loved it, and it was one of the first games where I really got into the story. In fact, I first played the game at the same time I played Mafia, because I borrowed both of them from a friend at school. Borrowing physical PC games, I wonder if that still ever happens today? After Sands of Time, out came Warrior Within, and man, I was surprised with the turn they took with this game. And it's not the gameplay I'm talking about, that's still really good. I didn't enjoy the shift in art direction and tone at all. It looks like the aim was to produce something more mature and dark, but I think it really took away the unique style that the game had before. The game even ended up getting an M rating, unlike Sands of Time, which was just rated T. While I'm a big fan of metal and fan service, I don't think those things fit the franchise at all. And neither does all the blood and gore. if perhaps this was like a spin-off and didn't, I don't want to say leech off of, Sands of Time's story, or, wasn't part of that storyline, then I think I would have liked the game more because it was more of a standalone thing. But it wasn't, so yeah, that was the disappointing bit. Despite my disappointment, I can't say I dislike the gameplay. It's terrific and hugely fun to play. Age of Empires 3. This is a game I've talked about before in the Bargain Bin series. I was pretty positive about it in that video, and considering I only paid a couple of pennies, basically, there isn't much to complain about. But as a lifelong Age of Empires fan, I think there's some very definitive backward steps going on here. Overall, the biggest thing that bothers me is that it feels simplified. There are only 3 resources: food, wood, and money. I really don't know why stone needed to be removed. In fact, I would have liked if there were even more resources, like with Empire Earth, for example, which had iron in addition to food, gold, and wood and stone. I also wish Age of Empires 3 had more ages. I know that the theme is the colonization of North America, but with earlier games, the shift between ages felt more substantial. I know that there's also the Asian Dynasties expansion, which I haven't played yet, and I'm sure that helps in terms of getting more variety in the game. I did enjoy playing it. I like the graphics. The distraction physics are still pretty good looking, and in no way does the game feel clunky or weird to play. While it doesn't hold my interest for that long compared to the older games, I still like playing it for an hour or 2 each day for a couple of weeks, back when I was reviewing the game. And that is the end of the list. I'm sure there's more games to talk about, but I feel that this is a decent length for a video. Like I said in the beginning, this video very much has the potential of coming across as negative or nitpicky. Actually, I'm sure it does to some people, but I tried countering that as much as I can by mentioning some nice things about the games whenever I could. Most games I talk about I still really enjoyed, despite my complaints. I think that's actually important. It's really easy for us to look for things to dislike subconsciously. Not just with games, but with everything. I see that a lot with music. I like the song, but not the singer. Or with extreme metal, it's usually the growling or screaming vocals that get criticized. But usually they like everything else about the songs, like the guitars, bass, and drums, the melody or song structure as well. So why let one thing keep you from enjoying something? That's the sort of mindset I want to have with everything in my life. After all, it's about enjoying life, so why should I keep myself from liking something? That's how I see it anyway. Obviously, the art games in the video I sold, so it's not like I'm saying, oh, just like everything. I think you know what I mean, though. Hopefully you found that interesting. Let me know about your video game disappointments. If you still somehow enjoyed playing the games, please like the video if you did. It may not sound like much, but it actually does make a lot of difference here on YouTube. Things like thumbs ups and comments seem to have an effect on whether things get recommended to people or not. There are a few ways to help out the channel if you are feeling generous. Patreon is one way, of course, especially if you want your name on the end card somewhere. There's a join button below to become a YouTube channel member as well. Something I've also been thinking about is merch. I think we're getting to a stage where it's something we can take a look at. But honestly, since I'm a terribly boring person, there's no real catchphrase or inside joke that I couldn't slap on a t-shirt or something. Literally, the only idea I have is just plastering the logo basically on, a mug or a shirt or whatever. Let me know if you have any ideas. I don't expect any real big demand for this sort of thing, to be honest. So if I ever do come out with some merch, it'll probably be, like very limited amounts. Unless I use one of those services that just prints stuff on demand. I don't know yet. I'll just monitor the comments for now and do some research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.